again. So today I'm going to go over one of the essays that I wrote titled An Unapology for Being White. In general, the toxicity that I've seen on the internet has not been the experience that I have when I'm talking to people in person. In general, I've found that people are more than willing and able to have very mature conversations with deep and dark topics. But there are a few instances where even close friends of mine have told me that I should not do any talking because I'm white. So for example, when George Floyd died, I had opinions to say about, the fact that people, I would find teenage white girls walking out of Target with makeup, with a smile on their face, knowing perfectly well that they were going to be on social media saying that they stood up to social injustice. That this contradiction of the signal of virtue, virtue signaling that hey, I'm a good person, I stood up for the death of this person, but I also got some free makeup, was quite jarring to me. And so that was one of the things that kind of set me off a bit. And then on top of that, the extent to which the cities burned and the likelihood that this turned out well or ended in a manner that was purporting to justice was tough for me. And I had a close friend of mine say, "Geno, you're white. You can't talk on this. You shouldn't talk on this." And I thought that was a bit strange. I mean, I have had another friend of mine on the topic of abortion say, because I don't have a womb, I shouldn't have an opinion on this. And I've always found these types of arguments that, if you don't inhabit this group perfectly, if you've never walked in their shoes, you shouldn't have an opinion. But I don't think that argument holds up, and I don't think that works in the realm of morality, because we have an obligation to rise, not an obligation, but a responsibility to rise to the occasion when we see something evil. So, for example, I've never been a murderer. I don't know what it's like to walk in the shoes of someone who has murdered, but if I saw someone murder, I will have a strong opinion about it. Should I not? Because I don't know what it's like for that person. Now, there are, of course, varying degrees of information that I could take into account to determine how culpable this person was. Did they have mental illness? Were they schizophrenic? Was the person they killed, had they just killed their child? At least that would make it more understandable. Of course, there's information that we could add to the context, but there's no person inhabits another person perfectly. So, for example, a black person does not know what it's like for this other black person right next to them to live. They don't have the same parents, they don't have the same income, they weren't born the same day, they weren't born in the same city. The degree to which you can understand a person has to be extrapolated across your imagination, where it's just like, okay, yes, I've never lived on 24th and X, but I have lived on this street and I've experienced this, or I've heard stories of this, so therefore I could probably imagine pretty vividly a decent simulation of what it feels like to be in that situation. Of course, the experience you have will better the simulation that you can imagine in your mind, but you won't be able to perfectly map it because you aren't that individual. And so this argument that because I haven't walked in this person's shoes, or because I'm not that skin color, or because I don't have a womb, it doesn't hold up. Because when morality beckons, when we see something come to the forefront of our minds and we witness something that should be spoken up against, if we say nothing, then evil will win by default. This was one of the things that Ayn Rand was very good about writing in her books was evil doesn't win because it has a strong argument. It wins by default. It wins by the surrendering of the responsibility by the good to do what is necessary. And so, I think that there's some truth to that. I do think that the darkness and the nihilism and the cynicism that people have about people, there are reasons to hate humanity, and there are reasons to hate or to desire vengeance, but I don't think that it is the best argument. So I think that there's the argument of good is a stronger and better and more fulfilling argument, and so though nihilism has its point, I don't think that it's the best. So I wanted to share this essay, just sharing the way that I was feeling with this one requirement of backing down because of the group that I happen to be born into, and then two, this requirement of actively standing up. So Ibram X. Kendi saying, if there's no such thing as just a non-racist. There's either racists, the people who actively perpetuate the evils in the world, or there's anti-racists, the people who are actively fighting injustice. So you can't even not have an opinion on this. If you don't have an opinion, your opinion is contributing to evil. And so, I don't agree with that whatsoever. I think that that's just absolutely absurd. First of all, there's ignorance. There's people who just don't understand or know. There's also the fact that if someone were exposed to the suffering of an individual, they would likely side with that person. So this idea that if I'm not actively out rioting in the streets, taking makeup from Target, then I'm a part of the problem is preposterous. So this idea of forced activism, otherwise you aren't innocent. You are only innocent if you contribute to the cause. So that is essentially what this essay focuses on, and I hope that you find it useful. So, an unapology for being white. Raise your fist, join us in solidarity. Unless I believe in your cause and in the way you're going about handling it, I will not. The demand for virtue defeats its purpose. The condemnation of a person because of the color of their skin is racist. The hatred of another group is xenophobic. The lynching of a person's character because of what they did not do is evil. The disinterest in someone's suffering because they do not belong to your tribe is not empathy. The cry to destroy someone's life because they disagree with you is tyrannical. I'm white, I am male, I am straight. I will not apologize for any of these traits. I did not choose whom I would be knit in as in my mother's womb. I did not choose to be attracted to the female body. I did not choose to be born as the 98.5% of the population are, which is aligned with their observable sex organs. Because I do not choose these things, I can't take any pride in them as though the traits in it of themselves are of any merit. For this same reason, I cannot take any blame or evil for them either. Am I swatting a hornet's nest by positing this essay? Most likely. Is it worth striking a hornet's nest? It depends. Personally, I'm getting a bit tired of being stung with accusations of evil because of these characteristics. Granted, most of these slights are not personally aimed at me. It is an amalgamation of television, education, advertisement, and colloquially sensitive conversation that reaches the point of odium ad nauseum. Odium is hatred, so hatred to the point of nausea. When She-Hulk can say she handles her anger better than Bruce Banner, a man whose potential father-in-law tried to have him murdered, and his second lover was killed because of a purple-faced alien from Titan, because she deals with being mansplained and catcalled every day, we have a problem. We have a problem when nearly every commercial has unconscious white men being educated by their competent and conscious wives. When a Drexel University professor can tweet, "All I want for Christmas is white genocide," and still keep a job, but a Google employee can be terminated for simply questioning unconscious bias training, I think it has reached the point of saying, no more, not on my watch, not from me. I will not apologize or bend my knee to anyone who demands it, whether it be God or man. I was fortunate to be born in a society with a precedent that denies that type of force, the rights I have as an individual. That precedent must, of course, be followed through for all the citizens of this country, and of course, it has failed to do so. But the solution to this problem is a greater degree of diligence, not pointing the sword at the former executioner. It's worse than this, as it is simply pointing the blade at the person who looks like the former executioner. I, as an individual, have the right to stand for the things that call to my conscience. I, as an individual, have the right to fail to do so. And I, as an individual, have the right not to join the party you tell me to join. Conversely, you, too, have these rights. What should one apologize for? Their own sins. If I fail on a given dimension, I must own up to the consequences. It is not my duty to take the lashes for the sins of another man. I could not do this even if I wanted to, which I do not. It is that man's responsibility to seek penance for his sins. I will not rob him of the right and privilege of becoming something more than he was before, and I will not allow myself to become a scapegoat for some maddened crowd that needs a witch to burn for their misfortunes. Am I sorry that I'm white? I'm not. Am I sorry that I'm straight? I am not. Am I sorry that I am a man? I am not. And unless you enjoy the feeling of utter disappointment, do not ask me to be. October 12th, 2022. So it's a very, very short essay. It didn't really make much of an argument other than essentially leave me alone and give people the right to be left alone. Do not try to call them immoral by not standing in your riot. So I think that there's something to be said about this. What happened to Floyd was, of course, terrible. I don't think anyone disagrees with that statement. Of course, there's going to be a select few who are just assholes, who are evil people and saw that man suffering and took glee in it. I have yet to hear a single testimony of that being the case. But most people stood on the side of being terrified and abhorred what happened to that man. Now, I do think it's important to at least insert the asterisk that the autopsy never revealed any asphyxiation, but he had a triple the dose of what normal overdoses of fentanyl have in the system. That might be worth noting. It doesn't seem to be the case that this man was suffocated, at least according to the autopsy. Now, you can be cynical of the fact that the autopsy was white. Or the autopsist, I don't even know if the autopsist was white. I'm sure that I'm using the wrong word, but there does not appear to be evidence of asphyxiation. So the man didn't appear to be suffocated. Now, of course, you can make the argument that this man was potentially overdosing. He needed to have a giant amount of oxygen in his system because of the amount of drugs that he had in his system, and so being on the ground for 10 minutes probably didn't help. Fair enough, and the police officer went to prison. But there is no person that I saw, that I have ever even had a conversation, even in private, when we talked about this, and this was ringing through the ears of everyone basically around the world that had a television, that we were all on the side of, it's not okay for a cop to do that. If this is the cause of death, no one was okay with it. You want the proof. The proof is the fact that everyone joined you in the riots. Of course, there's a few select people who didn't participate, but even they say, I did not approve of this behavior. And so the argument that white people we just allow the genocide and the death and the hunting of their bodies, as Ibram would say, this would be Ta-Nehisi Coates. This idea that their bodies are under attack is just blatantly untrue. First of all, most of us just don't care about anyone. It's just I wake up, I drink my orange juice. Actually, I don't even drink my orange. I drink my milk. I drink my coffee. I go to work. I wait for the end of my shift. I drive home. Like, this is most people. How many people really wake up thinking, how can I make someone suffer? How can I really make someone suffer? I don't believe it's the majority of the people in this country, and the argument is being weighed in as if it is, as if there's somehow this just swath of people who delight in the suffering of a specific group, and I don't believe the evidence supports that. I think that it's very clear. If we were okay with what happened to Floyd, we wouldn't have joined you in the streets. We wouldn't have voluntarily donated our money to causes like Black Lives Matter. Corporations, of course, virtue signaled in return, but it was partly in sign of compassion, to align on this side that we're not okay with the death of innocents. And this person wasn't innocent. So this notion that you as a person must be silenced. If you don't, well, first, I think it's more like you must be silenced if you don't agree with me. I really think that that's the first argument that's being posited. It's really, you don't agree with me? Okay, let me point out a characteristic in which I can use to shut you down. Okay, you're white. Okay, you're straight. You're a man, so therefore you can't have opinions on these. It's a really cheap attack. It's not useful, and on top of that, you miss the opportunity to hear when you go off the rails. If you're silencing someone, you being blinded from their opinion could remove you from the capacity to hear the fact that you might be going off the rails, the fact that you might be doing something evil. So, it's as much as it's painful when you are under distress, you are very vulnerable. I mean, I've experienced this myself. As I ever try and put my life in order, the more I do it, the more I have reason to be a judge against others. So be careful if you are if you've been victimized, because the bitterness is an instinct that could overwhelm you and cause you to do more injustice. I mean, we see this throughout history. It's injustice repaid with injustice. So I think that that's important. And so because of that, it is necessary to allow the voices of others around you, just to at least give you the chance to have that opinion shared. So I'm about to start my shift, so I'm going to have to let you go. But I know this, I was a bit rushed on this one. I wish I would have had a little bit more time on it, but I do hope that this was helpful for you, and hope you have a good day.